Hey peeps, it's Angela. I've made a quick Skinner blend using the two Cernet colors that I listed. And now I'm going to take a little bit more of the Cernet Pearl Black. I'm going to set a piece aside to use for some detail, and then I'm going to flatten the rest of this little log that I have. I just want to get some rough squares that are about 1.25 inches. Now I'm going to take my pliers and remove the elbow bend and straighten this out. That will allow me to slide the bead on easier. I'm going to use 2 of the 3/4 inch round beads to make the basis for the horns. Once I have the beads on, I'm going to put the bend back in the headband. Then I'm going to coat the wood beads with Bacon Bond. You could use poly paste or liquid clay. I'm going to cover the bead with the black clay, partly to disguise it, but also because it gives a clay base for the horn to attach into. And I think that just gives a better connection than trying to attach it to the raw wood bead. So this doesn't have to go all the way up and around. As long as it meets up at the top area, you're going to cover that with the base of the horn anyway. I think that the way I'm squishing it, it's just thinning it out enough that it does actually extend that far. But if it doesn't matter. Just put a little bit more Bacon Bond in that area, and that will fill in any gaps. And just make sure when you do attach the horn that you're pressing down a little bit firmer onto it to get a really good connection. While you're wrapping the bead, pay attention to make sure you're not getting any air bubbles up underneath the clay. They do tend to be a little bit easier to get, in my opinion, when you're attaching it to a surface that's a little bit porous as well. So just pay special attention to that. When you're working around the metal of the headband, you want to cover the bead. You don't want to cover the headband. Because we're going to slide the bead on the headband to make our ears or our horns poseable. We don't want to completely encase that with clay to make it more difficult. So now we're going to take each half of the Skinner sheet and we're going to roll that up into a snake, which we'll reduce it to make a plug. And then each plug will make one of the horns. Just make sure when you're rolling it that you're compressing it tightly and getting any air out of it. Then you're going to use the sides of your hands, press it into the tile, whatever way works better for you to compress it. We do want it to be a plug. And then we're going to start shaping the horn out of the plug. I'm going to smooth the seams and make sure there's no visible sharp lines. And then I'm going to reduce the plug into a cone shape. And then from that cone shape, I'm going to elongate it a little bit further to make the horn. I forgot to get a ball tool out, so don't know if you know it or not, but your knuckle makes a nice handy little substitute just in case you don't have a ball tool. So the indentation that I made with my knuckle is what is actually going to go across the top of the bead. And then I'll just blend the base together once I have the horns worked out a little bit. I kind of want to elongate them a little bit, and then I'm going to make sure that they're an even height. I want them to be an obvious pair, but I don't think that they need to be mirror imaged or completely symmetrical with each other. So I'm going to pull them out of the triangle. When you're elongating it, make sure you're pressing from the center to push up to the tip, because it's easy to get an air pocket at the tip and then that just causes it to break. Now I'm going to start forming the twist within the horns themselves. I'm going to twist and pull, and then I'm going to push the clay back on itself while I'm compressing it. That will leave some of the striations visible and will give you a little bit more depth and detail within the horn itself. So I'm just rolling it out in a twist, and then I'm pushing it back on itself to keep those serrations going. And I'm just going to do that until I'm happy with the way it looks as a base, and then I'm going to attach it to the bead. At this point, the clay is raw clay to raw clay, so I don't need to use any kind of adhesive or liquid clay between the two clays when I attach them. If your clay is dry, you might want to, though. The Sarnet is pretty soft, but if you have a drier clay, you might find that you do need to use Bake and Bond or liquid clay even when you're attaching the raw clay to raw clay. So when I have them looking close enough to each other, I'm going to attach it to the bead. I am going to pull the clay from the bottom of the horn down onto the bead and wrap it around it. But I am, again, just keeping it on the bead itself, not overlapping the headband or the metal part. At this stage, I want to completely pull the clay down around the bead and blend those two areas together thoroughly. I am keeping it off the metal, but I know that some clay is going to end up around the bead hole, and that's okay. It adds a little bit of friction and helps the horn stay in place better when you move it into a different position. I'm still compressing, twisting, compressing. I'm just trying to work the curve down into the base of the horn until I'm happy with it. And then when I have it looking kind of like I want it, I'm going to go ahead and put some texture on it. I just want a light organic texture, so I'm going to use a piece of aquarium filter sponge that I cut off of one of the filters. When I changed my system on my tanks, I ended up with different filters that I no longer needed. And I thought, instead of tossing those, let's cut it apart and see how it works. And it does leave a pretty nice organic texture on the clay. And I think it'll be suitable for this. So that is where the blue sponge came from. And I'm just going to apply a little bit of texture to the horns, and then I'll keep working with them. I'm going to press a few lines in just to mimic the lines that are present in the top of the horn. And I'm going to continue fiddling with it until I get it where I want it. The next step is going to be to wrap the base of the horn with, it's basically a bone encasement the horns seem to grow out of, so I wanted to mimic that a little bit. I'm going to roll the snake out thin enough that it looks size appropriate. I think the bone base can be thicker or thinner, however you want it to look. I did flatten the snake into the tile a little bit to give it solid edge to come up against the base of it, and I'm wrapping this above the headband, and then I'll texture it with the blue sponge and make any final adjustments before I'm ready to bake. The headbands and the bead sets really open up a lot of opportunity to make things like this. You could make dragon horn, you could make a unicorn horn, you could make any kind of really head attachment that you wanted to. It could also be kind of tilted sideways and worn on the forehead as a horn adornment there. All kinds of different ideas that could be done with it. I started with the little devil horns just because they were the first thing that popped to mind. But the more I played with it, the more ideas kept coming. And I can't wait to see what you do with this technique. Bake your piece according to your manufacturer's instructions. I'm going to pop this one in the oven on top of a paper covered tape core that I've had for a long time. I just took a core of a tape roll and cut it in half, and I've used it to support many things that needed a curvature over the years, and I think it'll work really well for this. So I'm going to bake it, and then I'm going to come back and show you how easy it is to move the beads once it's fully cured. So here are the finished horns. The fun thing with these is that the bead has a straight hole in it and the headband has a curvature to it. So the bead automatically wants to apply tension to the headband, but when you push on it, you can move it easily, but that natural tension works to hold the horn in place once you have it where you want it. So you can wear them at the top, at the bottom, frontwards, backwards, whatever way you want to wear them. And it will look a little bit different each way. So anyway, there is my Poseable costume horn tutorial. I hope you've enjoyed it. You can find me on Facebook and Polymer Clay Peeps. Thanks for watching.